My name is Heather Hochrein, and I'm the founder and CEO of EVmatch, and I'm really excited to be here with everyone. This is our first webinar. We're thrilled to be co-hosting it with EV Life, and Peter Glenn, as you heard, is here as well, and he'll be speaking a little bit more about how to find the right EV for your lifestyle, and a bit more about his service as well. So we're going to jump right in. The things that we're going to cover today: first, we're going to do speaker introductions. Then we will be going over how to pick the right EV for you and your family. So we're going to cover a few key considerations. We're going to do a little bit of overview of what types of EVs are out there, what are the charging options, and how that might influence the EV that you choose. Then we're going to dive into EV Life and how they can help with the buying and leasing process. And lastly, we're going to review some upcoming webinars and useful resources. So I don't think that William is able to join with the audio right now, but I'll do a quick intro. William Truesdell leads our sales and marketing here at EVmatch. He brings expertise in the EV charging arena, as well as public policy and political advocacy. He's previously worked for elected officials in Colorado, and he has a BA from University of Colorado Boulder. Peter, I'm going to pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm Peter Glenn, one of the co-founders here at EV Life. We just launched our web platform in late 2019 to help make it easier for people to navigate the complexities of switching from a gas car to an electric. This webinar, it's a huge source of inspiration to help people overcome the challenges we're going to talk about today. I have a background in marketing and business development at tech companies like Glassdoor, Singularity University, and also Fenix International, where we helped bring solar power to over 3 million people living off grid. So super excited about clean technologies, especially electric cars right now. And thank you so much to EVmatch for inviting me to co-present with you today.
And I'm the founder and CEO of EVmatch. And I founded EVmatch in 2016 as an innovative solution to increase access to electric vehicle charging. I bring expertise in the clean energy efficiency, and electric transportation sectors. And I previously directed energy efficiency and workforce training programs at Rising Sun Center for Opportunity in Berkeley, California. I have an MS in environmental science and management from UC Santa Barbara, and a bachelor's degree from UC Berkeley. And I'm thrilled to be here today to share more with you about electric vehicles, especially if you're considering buying an electric car. And we're here to serve as a resource so you can get all of your questions answered that you might be curious about some different technologies, and we're here to share what we know. So with that, I'm gonna dive right in. So as many of you know, air pollution is a major problem in the United States, as well as the growing threat of climate change. And you might be aware that transportation emissions actually contribute the most to our greenhouse gas emissions in this country and contribute to significant air quality issues. Luckily, the electric vehicle era has arrived. So given that, there's a lot of opportunity to reduce these emissions by going electric, either fully electric or purchasing a plug-in hybrid vehicle. But with that, some people are a little bit intimidated, given that this is new technology, and there's a variety of things to consider. So we're going to review some of these key components, including the types of EVs, the costs associated with electric transportation, including upfront and operating costs, and also charging. So we'll review the different levels of charging and private versus public charging. So to get started, I'm going to talk about plug-in hybrids. So plug-in hybrids or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles are really kind of an extension of the traditional hybrid. They have both an internal combustion engine as well as an electric motor and a lithium-ion battery. Now, the difference between a traditional hybrid and a plug-in hybrid is that they are actually plugged into the electrical grid and their battery is charged from external source. They typically have fairly small batteries, so they can run between 10 to 54 miles on the electric battery. And then after that, they will use the internal combustion engine and gasoline. So these are especially useful vehicles for folks who don't have access to home charging, additionally for people who might not be completely ready to make the switch to a fully electrified vehicle. And then these are also useful cars if you really don't drive that much. You maybe drive 10 miles to work every day, and you have the ability to charge between your different destinations. I will note that plug-in hybrids are actually a little bit more expensive than short-range battery electric vehicles, and we'll discuss that further. So if you really have a short commute and you're thinking about using an electric vehicle for that purpose, you might consider a shorter range full battery electric vehicle. Lastly, I'll mention the examples here. So we have the Prius Prime, we have the Toyota Outlander, you can see the SUV plug-in hybrid, the Mitsubishi Outlander, the Toyota, and then we have a Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid. Now, what you've all been waiting for, the battery electric vehicles. So, of course, this has been very popular with Tesla vehicles. The Model 3 in particular has made more people excited about going fully electric. So a battery electric vehicle does not have an internal combustion engine. It runs solely on the electric motor and the lithium-ion battery. So the examples here are the Tesla Model 3 and the Chevy Bolt. Now, these vehicles have a much larger battery. Typically, the range is 100 to about 330 miles per charge. And these vehicles are really a good way to lower your emissions and increase your cost savings. So if you want to make a full step to lowering your operating costs and reducing your carbon footprint, going all electric is really the way to go. So this slide highlights the growing popularity of long-range electric vehicles. So I'm going to break it down. The light blue are short-range electric vehicles. The gray are plug-in hybrids, and the dark blue are long-range battery electric vehicles. So I want to show that there's been a big jump between 2014 and 2019 in the percentage of sales of long-range battery electric vehicles. Notably, it was 14% in 2014, and then in 2019, it was actually 66%. And so the reason for this is that largely, there's more available models coming out. So the Model 3, the Tesla Model 3 and the Chevy Bolt came out during this time period. And then secondly, people are finding and realizing the benefits of full electric vehicles. People like the performance. They enjoy the acceleration, the instant torque, as well as the cost savings and the environmental improvements. So there are a few things to consider when purchasing an electric car. Of course, the upfront costs and the operating costs. So I want to highlight here a couple items. One, you probably have heard that the upfront costs of electric vehicles are higher than that of an internal combustion engine car. And that is true. However, when you think about operating these vehicles, there are tremendous savings to be had in reduced fuel costs and reduced maintenance. So in this upper chart, you can see we have an example, the Hyundai Kona Electric. And with this vehicle, you can see it'd be $53 for electricity in a month versus $157 for gas. So there's almost 3 times savings right there. And then if you look below, you can see the 5-year savings for this vehicle is almost $5,000. And so the green shows that the vehicle was a little bit more expensive to purchase up front, the Kona, versus a similar gas vehicle with all-wheel drive. But the cost savings with lower cost fuel, so electricity versus gas, and the maintenance savings really make up the difference. And so over 5 years, you can save almost $5,000. Now this tool comes to us from Pacific Gas and Electric, a electric utility in the San Francisco Bay Area. So you can check that out if you're interested. And many utilities have tools like this where you can actually calculate the cost savings of your desired electric vehicle versus a gas vehicle. So I also want to note that battery costs have been decreasing over time. And so there's a lot of discussion about when is the right time to buy an electric car. Of course, the lithium-ion battery is a major component of the cost. And so that's a real consideration. But as you can see here, we've seen improvements in battery technology. And you can see from 2015 to 2020, there's been significant savings. So in 2015, the EV itself, about 50% of that cost was due to the cost of the battery. And here in 2020, it's now almost down to 25%. Now, we do expect that there will be additional technological advancements that will lower these costs, but you can see that those are fairly insignificant in the next few years. So I will encourage folks to really think about buying an electric car now and harnessing those operating savings that you will unlock with an electric vehicle. So now I'm going to jump into charging. So it's important to think about charging in a different way than we currently fuel gasoline vehicles. So charging an EV is a little bit more similar to charging other electronics, for example, where they're typically charged in the places where you spend time. So near work, near home, as opposed to just stopping and fueling very quickly, you're often finding locations that are convenient and charging consistently throughout the day. So there are 3 different levels of charging stations. There are level 1, level 2, and level 3, or fast charge, also called DC fast charge. So level 1 is a 110 volt outlet and typically found at home or at work. These are standard outlets and they provide about 5 miles of range per hour. So this may sound very slow, but if you're charging overnight, for example, for 8 to 10 hours, this is typically sufficient for people who are not driving a long commute every single day. Now, level 2 is 220, 240 volt. This can charge your vehicle in about 3 to 8 hours. It adds about 25 miles of range per hour. And this is the type of charging level that EVmatch provides. Now, fast charging stations are much faster. They can add about 100 miles of range per hour and even more with some faster charging stations. They use direct current as opposed to alternating current. And these are particularly useful along highway corridors. So this is the model that's most similar to the gas station model, where you will stop, you'll charge up, you'll have a meal, for example, and then you'll continue on your way. So as I mentioned, home charging is the most convenient way to charge your electric vehicle. So home charging stations are often standard outlets, so a 110 volt outlet, or they're a level 2 charging station like the one displayed here. So with this charging station, the homeowner has installed an external device that can be used for charging their vehicle. Some of the benefits of a charging station include the ability to schedule and monitor charging. And that's also helpful if you want to schedule charging at a time when your utility has lower rates. For example, there are specific EV rates that are 5 cents cheaper per kilowatt hour. And so you can schedule your EV to start charging at that exact time. Now, workplace charging is also very convenient. This is typically level 1 or level 2. You'll be charging for eight hours, for example, maybe shorter if you're sharing those charging stations. But what I do want to encourage is that folks talk to their employers about charging at work. If you're considering an EV and you would benefit from workplace charging, we have heard that most employers actually install charging as a response to EV drivers. So being an advocate for that charging station is a really effective way to get reliable and convenient charging at work. Additionally, many utilities have programs that will reduce the cost of these installations. And then lastly, public charging. So public charging is typically level 2 or 3. And so it's faster charging speeds because you are not spending as much time at these locations. These are often retail locations, malls, or highway corridor stops. So you can see that example here is a fast charging station from Electrify America. And these charging stations are typically on a network. A few examples include ChargePoint, Electrify America, and Tesla. And then additionally, EVmatch is a unique type of public charging network where we bring together private charging stations and make them accessible to EV drivers on a reservation basis. So like I said, EVmatch is a peer-to-peer network for electric vehicle charging. So we are harnessing all those private charging stations that people have installed in their driveways, in their businesses, and bringing those together in an easy-to-use app. It's evmatch.com, and our apps are available in the app stores. And through our applications, you can easily reserve a charging station in advance, which helps to reduce range anxiety, which is that feeling of stress that you're going to run out of battery charge. So we're trying to make it easier for everyone to go electric, particularly those who don't have access to their own home charging. So with that, I'm going to try and pass it over to William. I'm not sure if he is on the call yet. So William, are you able to hear me?
I believe William is having trouble getting in still, unfortunately, Heather.
Okay, all right, well, that's fine. I will continue on. So now we're going to move into a section about which EV is right for you. So to begin, we want to kind of break it down into a couple of different customer segments or customer archetypes. So one idea is that you might be looking for a commuter car at the best price. And so this might be a car where you really just want a car that gets you to and from work, you want to save money, and you want to reduce your carbon footprint. So that's often a motivation as well. Lastly, I will mention that a lot of folks buy a commuter EV because they want access to the carpool lane, and that's a big benefit. So a few examples of vehicles that might fit into this use case or might be a good fit for you is the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Bolt, and the Tesla Model 3. And so you can see here the prices after incentives. I will also mention that there are a variety of incentives to help reduce the upfront costs of these electric cars. So I didn't mention earlier, but there's a $7,500 federal tax credit that's still available. It may not be available forever, so I definitely encourage folks to think about that opportunity now rather than later. And then there's also a lot of state incentives, and Peter is going to talk about those specific incentives for your local jurisdiction. And then there's also a lot of state incentives, and Peter is going to talk about those specific incentives for your local. So then if you're looking for a family-friendly EV, you might be more interested in a compact SUV, such as the Kia Niro EV or the Hyundai Kona. Now, these are newer vehicles that actually just came out in 2019. So some folks didn't even know that there were SUVs available in electric, all electric. So I want to highlight that there are an increasing number of vehicle makes and models available that fit different types of lifestyles. So if you are looking for a slightly larger vehicle that has a hatchback, has all-wheel drive capabilities, these are some examples to check out. And then lastly, you might be looking for a luxury EV. So you're looking for a performance vehicle. These are some examples to consider: the Audi e-tron, the BMW i3, and the Jaguar I-Pace. And again, you can see the incentives there. So regardless of if your motivation is to save money in your commute, to have a safe and comfortable family vehicle for road trips, or to have a luxury vehicle, a performance vehicle, there are certainly a wide array of options for you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Peter to talk through the steps for picking your best EV.
Thanks so much, Heather. So at EV Life, as I mentioned earlier, we help people go through the process of navigating the complexities of choosing the right car for their life. And we've learned so much from the hundreds of users that we've worked with since we launched our web platform back in January. And we've boiled it down to 6 easy steps that you should really consider if you are thinking about buying an electric car. First, it's really good to narrow your search using some of the factors that Heather just mentioned around what type of car is best for your life, best for your commute. Evaluate the kind of charging and range options that those cars have. Take them for test drives. Consider leasing versus buying when they talk about some of the unique factors to consider there for EVs. And then negotiate your best price. And then, of course, we're in the age of coronavirus now, so arranging like a safe contact-free pickup or home delivery is really key. Next slide. So Heather talked about this a little bit already. This is a screenshot from EVlife.co. So if you go there today, you can use our free tools to help you go through this process of narrowing your search. But for a lot of folks, body type is really key, especially if you have a family or you like the outdoors. Really key consideration to factor in. And there are a growing number of crossovers and SUVs, which of course are very popular in the US to choose from. More coming out this year. Brand, many of you may have brand affinity. I grew up in a Toyota family, and I can totally relate to wanting to stick with certain brands. Each brand generally has like 1 or 2 great options. Unfortunately, Toyota does not have a great all-electric car yet. And then budget. Obviously, like anytime you shop for a car, you'll consider budget. But I think for an electric car, the biggest consideration to take into account is all the different incentives that are available. Next slide. So this is a screenshot of what you could find at EVlife.co. It's a breakdown of like, once you choose your specific car, you enter some basic income and zip code information, and we can spin up what incentives you qualify for and bring them all together in one handy place. So as Heather mentioned, there's a federal tax credit of $7,500 that apply to most car makers, with two big exceptions. Tesla and GM both have sold through their tax credit, so you get zero of the $7,500 tax credit for those two brands. For all other car makers, you can get the full $7,500 tax credit. And then a number of states, over 12 states, they call them zero emission states, offer some sort of rebate or tax credit between $2,000 to $5,000. In California, it's around $2,000. In Colorado, for example, it's $4,000. In Oregon, it's $2,500. So you want to look up what kind of rebates or tax incentives your states have. EV Life can help with that. And of course, do you qualify for a carpool lane, special parking benefits, special charging benefits? We list all of those out on EV Life to help you make the best decision around factoring incentives into your budget. Next slide. So really important thing, Heather talked about the different types of charging. It's really key if you're going to go all electric, especially, to have a charging base. Are you going to be able to install a charger at your home? Can you charge at your workplace or request a workplace charger? If not, it still might be possible. If you rent an apartment, there might be a good public option either near your work or near your home to consider. EVmatch is a great place to look. Even Google Maps can be a good place to look up different charging types. There might be one at a shopping center or Whole Foods near you that delivers fast charging options. So get that charging base locked in if you're going to go all electric. Next slide. The one thing I want to communicate to you is that while commuter range, like the drive that you have to work, has been an issue in the past, it is no longer an issue if you're going to buy a new electric vehicle. This is the Nissan Leaf, America's best-selling low-cost EV. They have longer range options, but the starter range for around $20,000 after incentives is 150 miles, and the average commute is just over 30 miles or so. So there really is no way that you're going to have an issue with your drive to work if you have a home base charger that you can charge up every few days. Next slide. So one key factor, though, if this is your primary vehicle that you're going to take trips in, you may have a gas car or hybrid that you like to take trips in. But if this is your primary vehicle and it's an all-electric vehicle, you want to consider your options for trips. So this is a map that I went into PlugShare, which is another tool like EVmatch where you can do some route planning for specific vehicles. I went in and you can see the green button on the upper left. I filtered just for 50 kilowatt hour charging or above, so I could see where the DC fast chargers are on my route from San Francisco to LA. And as you can see, there's a lot of charging options where I could stop for lunch, at 30 minutes, get my battery from 0 to 80%. On one of these DC fast charging options. So I'm covered for this trip. Next slide. But what about more remote locations? So from San Francisco, it's a few hours drive to a little town called Mendocino in the north, near the Redwoods. Beautiful remote location with less charging options. So I ran through this map with a customer and they were discouraged. They like to go to Mendocino a lot as a family and saw that there was no DC fast charging in the area. Next slide. But they still had charging options. So I went into EVmatch and found a level 2 charger, again, like 6 to 8 hours to recharge from empty to full, near town where they could plan in advance and schedule a time to charge during their trip. So that's one excellent option. And then number two, the family ended up buying an EV and actually ended up bringing their 110 volts, their AC, standard AC power wall plug, and ended up plugging in at their Airbnb. They just talked to their Airbnb host in advance and charged overnight, and it worked fine for them. Next slide. So this may seem obvious, but in the age of coronavirus, a lot of dealerships are closed, but they are delivering test drives to your home. So that could be one option to consider. And they disinfect the car and make it safe for you, and there's social distancing. So that's one great option if you want to test out a car right now. Another great option as we safely, slowly reopen our society is ride-in drives. These are big events in public areas where you can come together and see a lot of different types of EVs all in one place, and often talk to the people who own and drive the cars, which can be a great source of information. Check out driveweek.org for information on some big events nationwide that are coordinated in the fall. That could be a great resource. And then if you're not sure if an electric car is right for you, or you want to test hybrid versus full electric, renting a car for a week can be a great option. A lot of traditional rental companies don't have great EV options, but if you go to Turo.com, there are quite a few electric vehicles and hybrids available. Next slide. So leasing versus buying is one of the most unique questions for an electric vehicle owner. In 2016, 80% of EVs were actually leased. That's like 2 to 3 times what it is for a gas car. And that's because people who are leasing say that they see it as a lower risk option. They're waiting to see more cars, exciting cars come out of the market from Tesla and other car makers. The downside of leasing is that if you lease for, say, 24 months, you might actually be disqualified from some of your attractive state rebates. So, for example, in California, where I live, there's a $2,000 rebate, but you have to lease for more than 2 years. You have to get into a 3-year lease to qualify for that $2,000 back. So you want to factor that into any leasing consideration, is the timeline around state and other incentives. When it comes to buying, there might be benefits in terms of the fact that right now, EVs have changed a lot since 2016. The technology and the options have improved. There's about 50 electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids on the market today. Those options might be already there. If you made the investment in financing a car today, it could definitely meet your needs for the next 5 to 10 years. There are also great deals available, and in some cases, you have to finance to take advantage of those deals. Next slide. So in terms of negotiating your best price, I feel like financing is pretty straightforward, and there are great deals out there. For those who are thinking about leasing, maybe leasing for a first time because it's lower risk, a leasing calculator can be a great tool for you. Leasehacker.com is a great calculator that's free to use. Just go in and punch in the numbers that a car dealer may be quoting you on a lease deal and see how those numbers add up and try to negotiate your best price. At EV Life, through our concierge service, we also have a lease calculator tool that we can help you with. So just feel free to reach out to me or jump on our website to learn more about that. And then finally, you can actually hire someone to concierge your negotiation process. Just go into Yelp and type car broker and find somebody who has good reviews. They're located in almost every city and town across America. And they can actually, for a fee of usually $300 to $500 to start, can save you a fair amount of money and headache in terms of negotiating your best price. Because people have asked for it, EV Life is actually piloting a concierge service as well, a paid concierge service. And then if you come on our website, if you want to chat in our web chat or you want to email us, we offer free concierge services as long as we keep it online as well. So next slide. Then finally, again, in the coronavirus era, good to keep in mind that you can still purchase or lease a car, and that almost all dealers and car makers offer contact-free pickup or home delivery. So be sure to ask those dealers for those options if you are looking into getting your car. And then, so those are the 6 tips. And then I just wanted to give a shout out at EV Life. Of course, we're really excited that you're all here thinking about an electric vehicle. We are developing a new product around incentive-based financing. So for example, for that Nissan Leaf in California, you qualify for over $10,000 in incentives. We're working on a new product to factor that in up front and reduce your monthly payment. You can get a Nissan Leaf for less than $300 a month, for example. So if you're interested in that, feel free to email me, peter@evlife.co, to join our wait list. I'm happy to talk to you about that. And I want to hand it over back to Heather.
Thanks, Peter. This is William. Actually, I'm going to take over. Can everyone hear me?
Yep. Thanks, William.
Yeah.
All right. Great presentation, Peter. Thanks for talking about EV Life. I wanted to display some really helpful resources for folks who are either about to buy an electric car, thinking about it, or already have a car. So on the left side, you can see some helpful rebates and incentives Plug in America has a great database of all the federal and state incentives available. So I saw in the chat a few people from Texas, New Mexico had questions about their state specifically. I would highly advise you to head over to Plug in America and check out all of the incentives that they list on their site. There's also obviously resources about the federal EV tax credit, the $7,500 available for the purchase of a new electric vehicle that we've listed there, as well as the federal EV charging tax credit that is good through 2020. And that is up to 30% of the cost to install a charger plus the hardware. And that limit is $1,000 for a home EV charging tax credit. Obviously, EV Life will be linked here as well. And then on the right side for websites and apps that are useful, Peter mentioned driveelectricweek.org. National Drive Electric Week happens in September every year. Fingers crossed that we can make something happen this year. So definitely check out that website. There are always a bunch of events all over the country. And you can even organize your own event if you'd like. NLX is a maker of level 2 home charging stations. So check them out if you're in the market for a new charger. They have a great product. PlugShare, as we mentioned, is a very helpful aggregator of public charging networks. So if you don't have home charging, you do a lot of road tripping, etc., PlugShare is your friend. My Green Car is a great app as well. It can help you make the transition from a gas-powered vehicle over to an electric vehicle. It's an app that you can download. You enter the information about your current vehicle, and then it sort of tracks your driving habits and can let you know exactly how much you would save if you transitioned over to an EV. And then finally, we have EVmatch linked there as well. I wasn't able to be on at the beginning, some technical difficulties, but we'll be sending this PowerPoint slide out to all the attendees, so you can actually click on these links to check them out. Next slide. All right, so we do have 2 upcoming webinars scheduled. May 12th, same time, 12 p.m. Pacific time, is how peer-to-peer electric vehicle charging works and why it has so much potential. As Heather mentioned, EVmatch is a peer-to-peer EV charging network. So we're going to dive into that and explain why it has so much potential to increase charging at not the same investment required for other charging infrastructure. And then on May 26th, electric vehicle charging at apartments and condos, how to get your HOA or property owner on board, will be airing. And we're really going to do a deep dive into what it takes to get EV charging installed, some of our experiences, and how we can help you do it as well. Next slide. All right, great. So I think most people are familiar with the platform by now, but we're going to do a little Q&A session here where the panelists can speak to the questions asked. So get your questions in either with the Ask a Question button there at the bottom, as was on the screenshot on the previous screen, or you can just say something in the chat, as we've seen quite a bit. And with that, let's open it up for some Q&A. I'll MC this, so we're going to take a look at some questions. And we're still fielding them, so if you have any, go ahead and enter them. All right, so the first question, all right, so can you clarify how all the various apps or maps for charging stations sync together so an EV driver can find open charging stations easily? And I think we may have mentioned this in the chat, but I don't know, Heather, do you want to take a stab at that question?
Sure, yeah, happy to talk about that. So I'm glad that you mentioned PlugShare again. I would say PlugShare is probably the most comprehensive resource to look at all the different charging networks in one place. So that's plugshare.com, which Peter was also demoing. There's some road trip planning tools. And really what they do is they bring in all the public charging stations, or most of them, into their platform. And then there's also a crowdsourced component to that. So people can add new charging stations as they are installed, which helps to keep it really up to date. There, of course, is some other options. There's a DOE, Department of Energy, Alternative Fuels Data Center site, which is another good resource. And then Google Maps is another good option, but only a few networks are currently on Google Maps. So I would say, as an EV driver myself, I consistently use PlugShare. And then there can be some value in checking the local networks in your area. So some parts of the country, for example, have more coverage from EVgo or Electrify America or Blink. For example, Blink is more prevalent in the Pacific Northwest. So, there is some value in checking an aggregator app, but then also being aware that it might be worth checking that actual network app as well to see if there are additional stations.
Great. Thanks, Heather. The next question, there are a bunch of new apartments near me and none of them have chargers. So we see this as pretty common. How can I approach them, or at least recommend EVmatch approaches them?
William, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see for myself. So we work with a lot of customers who are interested in installing charging at multifamily buildings. Typically, the folks who are interested are the tenants, right? So the residents want charging because they either have an electric car or they want to buy one, but they don't exactly know how to go about it since they don't have, obviously, control over installing on the property that they don't own. So the first thing that's really helpful is having an advocate. So the tenant acts as an advocate and can be pretty persuasive with the property owner or the property manager or the landlord. And we have some great resources that kind of lay out all the benefits of EV charging. And in the context specifically of EVmatch, we have a product that is affordable for property owners, as well as a way for the tenants to easily and efficiently share the chargers among themselves with payment processing built in. So each EV driver will pay exactly for the electricity they use, and the property owner isn't on the hook just covering that cost. So that's kind of a great selling point to property owners. And then the other point is we have the booking and scheduling built into the app as well. So if you're in a apartment building with 100 folks and you're trying to all coordinate together to use 5 or 10 chargers, it can get a little hairy. So with EVmatch, you can actually reserve a charger for a specific day and time, so you don't have to do an antiquated whiteboard system of coordinating. So we have resources on our website, evmatch.com. For that, and we're always happy to help you with any multifamily projects that you have or you're interested in exploring. Right. Next, are there any good reasons to try to turn in a lease car a month or two early? So I think this is for you, Peter.
So in terms of turning in a lease car a month or two early, I think it just depends on the situation. It depends on the dealer, where they're at. I would just advise you to try and negotiate that on a case-by-case basis. So it might be possible, but I don't have any data on how often that happens or doesn't happen.
Great, thank you. Next, will EV charging station locations be incorporated in the Google Maps app/website? That seems like it would streamline EV drivers finding stations as part of their route planning. Do you want to touch on this, Heather?
Sure. Yeah, there already are a number of charging networks that are included in Google Maps. I believe ChargePoint and Electrify America and Tesla are currently included. and they may have added some additional networks recently. So that's certainly becoming a growing source, an aggregator tool for finding public charging stations. I can't say exactly what Google's planning to do, but I do think that that will continue to be a resource and can be a component of your trip planning.
Great. So somebody asked, what's going to be the standard across America, CHAdeMO or CCS plugs?
Yeah, I could speak to that. So I believe it will be the CCS standard, the combined charging standard, which uses the J1772 port plus an additional component that allows for the DC fast charging. And so really the CHAdeMO level 3 charging ports are currently found with primarily Japanese automakers, and the CCS standard is used for North American and European automakers. And then of course, Tesla has their own standard. But what I have seen, and I think that this trend is going to be likely, is that we will converge on the CCS standard. And even, it's hard to say exactly what Tesla will do, but at some point they may make the switch. And if they do, I would be surprised if they choose CHAdeMO.
Thanks, Heather. All right, this question's for you, Peter. Can you speak to buying out a lease at end of term? Someone's curious how these prices compare to just leasing again or buying.
Yeah, I can. For these type of lease deals and buyout deals, it often depends on the dealer. It often depends on their stock. It often depends on like how eager they are to move like leases out or in. So yeah, I would just recommend that you try to negotiate that on a case by case basis with your dealer. I would guess that again, in the age of coronavirus, that there's probably a little bit more flexibility, especially I've heard about folks getting lower cost renewals on leases of cars they already had. But in terms of buyouts, I can't really speak to that. I think it just depends on the dealer situation.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so we have a specific question here about the Nissan Leaf. Someone's curious about the Leaf's lack of thermal management. They're wondering if a 2015 or later Leaf would be okay in an environment that's around 100 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 to 8 months of the year. The car would be used mainly as a commuter car and wouldn't be doing any DC fast charging. It's really hard to find EV data for this person's region, and it might help make an educated decision about getting their first EV. So I don't know, Heather, do you want to talk about the thermal management piece?
Yeah, I would say I'm not sure that I can answer that question precisely at this moment, but we are certainly happy to look into those specifications and the vehicle that you're considering and give you some feedback. I think that there certainly are improvements in recent models of the Nissan Leaf, and I'd be curious what the concern is, if there's concern about battery degradation happening fairly quickly, but certainly not using DC fast charging will help to improve the longevity of that battery. And then, I think some other concerns are around really high operating temperatures and really low operating temperatures. These batteries can certainly perform under a variety of conditions and are designed to be more and more resilient over the years. So something post 2015 will probably have better performance. But with that said, happy to hear if maybe Peter has other ideas. And please do send us the details via email, and we'd be happy to use our resources to try and get you some more specific questions answered.
Yeah, I don't have too much more. Again, we're also happy to look up information if it can be useful. But yeah, I don't have information offhand on the specific parameters around charging for that 2015 Leaf. But maybe William, maybe we can put our emails back up on the screen in case folks do have questions they want to follow up with us on after the webinar. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah. So those are displayed now. So here's a question about charging. Will charger providers ever allow EV customers to use credit cards, just like gas stations do today? Does anyone still have Mobil, Exxon, or Chevron cards, et cetera? So sort of a question about making that more standard with credit card use. Do you want to touch on that, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually a lot of DC fast chargers, so those level 3 charging stations, do accept credit cards. So for example, EVgo and Electrify America do accept credit cards today. Tesla, they have their own system that bills you directly through your Tesla account. I don't anticipate that they'll build in credit card readers in the near term, with the exception of the state of California has a new rule that will be rolled out over the next few years that do require credit card readers. So in some states, there will be kind of an additional requirement. I'll also note that some level 2 charging stations have credit card readers, and so you will probably see that more consistently. But on that note, I think a lot of EV drivers also like being able to pay through the app and pay using Google Pay or Apple Pay. So those will likely be both of those options will be available.
Great, thanks. I think we'll go another 5 minutes. So if you have any last questions, get them in. So we have a few more here. So the next question is, what's the difference between peer-to-peer and crowdsourced? So this is obviously in terms of charging. We've talked about how EVmatch is a peer-to-peer network for EV charging. And then many folks talk about how PlugShare is a crowdsourcing tool. So do you want to touch on kind of those definitions a little more, Heather?
Sure. Yeah, so I think of crowdsourced as more leveraging a group of people or the public to crowdsource information, so to aggregate information that's then displayed through a platform. So PlugShare certainly has that ability where anybody can check in to let you know that a charging station is functioning. Anyone can add a pin to let you know that there is a new charging station. So that's how they're getting a lot of information, is relying on individuals who are reporting information back to their platform. In terms of peer-to-peer, there are some similarities, but it's a little bit more of a direct sharing component. So with our platform, people are not only giving information about where charging stations are available, but they're actually sharing access to their own charging assets. So whether that's an individual homeowner or a business owner, they are creating access to something that was previously only privately available and now making it publicly available. So those are kind of the primary differences there.
Great, thank you. Sort of in that same vein, we just got a new question about why the charging networks require proximity keys linked to credit cards.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I do know that several of the charging networks use RFID or NFC technology to basically activate a charging station from a mobile device. And so those technologies are used to initiate a user session and then to charge that user appropriately. But there are a variety of technologies used. I think those have been used primarily because they're fairly low cost and they're fairly ubiquitous capabilities on standard mobile phones.
Great, thanks. So we have a question about hybrids. Obviously, they're popular in the transition from gas vehicles over to fully electric vehicles. I guess the question is sort of, what are your general thoughts about hybrids? I know you touched on this, Heather, earlier in the presentation about comparison between plug-in hybrids and battery electric vehicles, but this question was kind of more specific to wondering why the automakers didn't have a more obvious message to car buyers about hybrids. So I don't know if you want to touch on that.
So just so I understand, is the question about if I think that hybrids are going to become more prolific, or plug-in hybrids, or what the messaging should be?
I think it's more about kind of what role they play generally, and then I think it was just a comment, sort of why wasn't the messaging about hybrids being sort of a transition car more clear?
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of what role they play, I do think that the traditional hybrid was a really good technology in terms of getting folks comfortable with electric motors and electric driving and integrating that into their driving behavior. Hybrids have much greater efficiency compared to standard internal combustion engine vehicles. Plug-in hybrids, I think, have some pros and cons. On one hand, they do obviously increase that efficiency, and you have those cost savings and environmental benefits. But I do view them as a transitional technology. They don't bring the full benefits that a battery electric vehicle has. They still have many moving parts because they have the internal combustion engine. And really, you're paying for both of those systems, to have both the internal combustion engine system and the battery and electric motor. So I do think, and I've thought this for a few years, and now we're starting to see the data to show it, that they will be quickly outpaced by full battery electric vehicles. And so we will see, in many cases, people jumping from a traditional hybrid to a battery electric and actually skipping the plug-in hybrid in between.
Great, thanks. And so there's just one last question I'm going to touch on, and I saw it a couple times in the chat box, kind of wanting more information about electric vehicles outside of California. Obviously, California's where they took off and where they continue to be a mainstay, but I know that folks outside of California are also interested in electric vehicles and the incentives available to them, and the vehicles available to them. So Peter, I don't know if you want to chime in here, but obviously the role that that ZEV states play in that is pretty large as far as what vehicle models are available. So do you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, so great question. EV Life, when we launched, we were primarily focused on California. Since then, we've added details on rebates for Oregon as well, state level and utility level rebates. But if you're in another state, you are able to use EV Life to look at vehicles and see the federal tax credit that you qualify for based on your vehicle type. So most of those tools will be applicable to anyone in the United States, not just California. But when it comes to all those extra perks like the carpool lane and things like that, we don't have nationwide coverage for those things yet. We're actively working to enter those other ZEV states that have most of those incentives at a utility or state level. We will provide information on that through the current flow today. If you really want to get an accurate flow for outside of those states, you can also look at Plug-in America's PlugStar tool. That's another free tool that can help you look up some of your rebates and incentives as well.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just echo that and remind everyone that PlugStar tool is linked in this slide deck that we will email to all the participants. This video was also recorded, so it's available on Crowdcast, on our channel on Crowdcast, and we'll also put it on our YouTube channel. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Here's obviously just our basic contact information for both EVmatch and EV Life. I'd like to thank our presenters, Heather Hochrein with EVmatch and Peter Glenn with EV Life, and feel free to send us any emails or questions. Our emails are listed there.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.